the wild. When I started with the stat book, I tried to find information about their status and looked into the IUCN red list, and the information in there did not change very much. It's listed still as the most important capped elasmobranch species with nets, and the catches have been increasing in the last years, so it's not very astonishing that they end up in fish markets. So this is a common picture from Southeast Asian fish markets. Neotrigon cooley is heavily used as a food fish, and therefore we thought it may be important to care for this species a little bit more and create a stat book. How are the animals which we keep? Hopefully in a better condition. Of course they are. Since we started to keep records, this was basically max. In 2000, the total number of animals recorded has risen to 111. There's a little bias towards the female Neotrigon cooleys. Every single animal has a unique ESP number from 1 to 111. These 111 animals, 60, almost a half of them are alive by today, and 50 are historical. So this is the very crude look into the database, very quick. The number of captive births has risen to 74 in the meanwhile. Almost the half of them are alive, the other half is historical. And again, you see a little bias towards female births. Maybe this is natural, we don't have any data from the nature. This is the state of the animals. How are the aquaria keeping it? The aquaria, number 22 aquaria reported the species. All of them try to keep breeding pairs. This is a geographical overview of Europe, of course, and every yellow dot resembles one aquarium keeping them. So there is a little bias towards the northwest of Europe. Overall 22. These are the names of the institutions which reported the species to me and take part in this stat book. Starting in Austria, and the end is the United Kingdoms. The recent addition is Universium Göteborg, so even a Scandinavian aquarium is already reporting species and tries to participate. As said, about 8 aquaria breed them. This is the status of the breeding pairs by today. Arnhem, Madrid, Haus des Meeres, Vienna, Bremerhaven in Germany, Torquay in the United Kingdom, again a breeding pair in Arnhem, and 2 breeding groups exist, one of them in Göteborg and the other one in Paris in the Cine Aquarium. Breeding group means that we don't know who the father is. There's one female and lots of males in this situation, therefore they are not, they're listed as multiple groups here. Yeah, this is the short situation. Yeah, what happened with the animals which were bred in this aquarium? We tried to distribute them to other aquaria, either to start the collections to keep this animal or to form new breeding pairs. Here you see the transports we made the last year. Most of the animals came from Arnhem. Max is the most successful breeder, and of course his group. And we distributed them to Emmen Zoo, to Hungary, Sosto Zoo, Vienna, of course. Sea life centers in Weymouth and Brighton received animals. And we tried to refresh the situation in Hull. there are old males which need new blood. And here we are already. Which problems do we have right now? Sudden death in the morning is one problem. Animals that have been eating well the last months and years die. Suddenly, we don't know really why this happens, but we suspect the food to be bad, and it may be just a husbandry problem. The next time this occurs, we will try to look into the hygienic situation on the food. The highest survival rate, that's the good situation, of course, is in Arnhem in the Burger Zoo. What's the lookout with this stud book? Yeah, one thing is to improve the husbandry, the feeding regime, and the other thing is that we try to put the basis of this stud book on a stable fundament. We need to improve the genetic makeup of our breeding groups. In April, we had an advisor, John Fitzpatrick from the University of Manchester, at the symposium, and he had a quick view on the pedigrees of our breeding race, and he said right now he doesn't think that there is some inbreeding going on, but it would be wise to add wild blood to our groups. This we did. We obtained 2 wild-caught animals and hope that they add to the genetic makeup. This is one thing, adding wild blood, and the other thing is we try to combine unrelated pairs. Of course, this is one thing which is very important. Involves transport, which is longer than good for your pockets, but this is just a small investment of money for a good basis of the genetic basis of this breeding group. This is the last slide. This is a newborn. A few weeks ago, was born in Vienna, and with this picture, I would like to thank you for your attention.
But there were a few deaths. 3 deaths reported in the last year, and then 1 which wasn't reported previously. It died in 2004, but it was just recently reported. And there were no transfers between institutions, and no institutions came online last year. So looking at this summary, it doesn't appear as though very much has happened with this species over the last year. So there's a very sad-faced one. But this is the number of participants and the number of animals in each of their collections. And you can see that there's probably a much better situation than with the seahorses in terms of participants. And there are a few potential facilities that have expressed an interest in holding them in the future. So sea life centers in Loch Lomond, Munich, and at Budapest. And there are animals available, so Warren said if anybody is interested in working with this species, please do get in touch with him because he can make sure that the animals get to you. It's really important to go down this path before going and buying one in from somewhere that you don't necessarily know where it's from. So it'd be really good if you could actually participate in the program. They have, okay. Hot off the press. Okay, fantastic. So they've done their moves now. As Max has mentioned with ESBs, it's not just about the population management, and Warren's got some key objectives for this ESB. He obviously wants to breed with founders as a priority, but and produce the stud book, and he promised that he would get the stud book done, didn't he, by next year. And he wants to increase the number of holders, but he also wants to develop husbandry guidelines for the species, so those people that are interested in keeping them, if they aren't familiar with species, they haven't kept it before, and they would like them, that they can be given the husbandry guidelines prior to receiving animals. He also wants to circulate and transfer breeding recommendations based on the mean kinship and inbreeding throughout participating institutions, and explore some in situ links, which I think is always good. There may not always be a direct link for, in the wild populations, but if there are, I think they should be certainly developed and added to the work of the stud book. And just a note about the husbandry guidelines as well. There's been a move to try and make husbandry guidelines a little bit less onerous to produce, and kind of making these more as husbandry notes, and that way they're much more dynamic, because many program coordinators have said, yes, I want to develop husbandry guidelines, and if you look at the rules for developing these within EASA, it's a huge amount of work, and just having helped with the hippocampus one, it was just way too much. So we're trying to find more easy ways of contributing useful data as notes, rather than just repeating what's already available in text elsewhere. There's a list of references if anybody's interested in them. These will be available, put onto the website, so you can go onto the EUAC website and look at those there. And there's a final picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Katie?
Hi again. So I am a stud bookkeeper for the Pristus species in Europe. The Deep isn't actually an EASA member, but we've taken on two separate stud books, one for Pristus pristus, I'll come on to this, it was previously Pristus microdon, and Pristus zidron. They are both critically endangered and listed on the IUCN Red List. As I said, we aren't members of EASA, so we are kindly supported by Oceanographic in Valencia and Oceanopolis in Brest for this. So coming on to the change in taxonomy, this year it was actually reported that Pristus microdon was actually part of the Pristus pristus species. These are the three that have now been categorized together: Pristus pristus, Pristus microdon, and Pristus perote. Sorry, perotate. I can't get my lips around it today. Pristus perote. I give up. Perotetti. So thank you. So now, confusingly, these are all classified as Pristus pristus. Although I imagine within aquariums it will take us a while to change our taxonomy. But this was actually based on mitochondrial studies for their DNA and also morphological characteristics, so it's pretty much set in stone now that this is the case. So current status in Europe is that we don't have very many. We've pretty much surveyed everybody, and as far as I know, there are 8 institutions keeping either Zidron or Pristus. Thankfully, all the Zidron are paired up, which makes life slightly easier, but at the moment, Pristus are currently either kept in same-sex pairs or individually. They're all wild-caught founder stock, and at the moment, there hasn't been any recorded breeding within Europe. Worldwide, there has been a successful breeding event for pectinata. However, I'm not entirely sure whether the young survived. This was at Paradise Islands in the Bahamas, and I believe this has happened on a couple of occasions. However, there are no pectinata or clavata in Europe. So, based on global data, this data is courtesy of Stacia White from Ripley's Aquarium, who hosts the AZA Pristis studbook. You can see the numbers globally are very low, with only 53 Pristis and 35 Zidron. This year, we've managed to create a literature review for both species relevant to us. As I mentioned, Zidron are all currently paired up, which is great, and we are working collaboratively with the AZA on a husbandry manual. We think actually this will be a good product for all of us to develop, and it's something that we will be continuing to work on, although, as Max mentioned, they are sort of quite slow growing and take quite a long time to develop. A husbandry survey has been sent out to currently all the keepers of known keepers of sawfish, and this is just really to grasp information on who is keeping what data for this species. And Stacia will hopefully present this at the Erasmus Bank Symposium in Monterey next month. So the goals for the stud book. It is quite a tricky stud book for a number of reasons. Firstly, due to the lack of individuals, and secondly, for the size that these animals really get to. Obviously, we'll continue to work on the husbandry manual, and this will form a major part of it. But another thing that we will be looking to do is potentially pair up some of the Pristis within Europe. There are some interested people in moving animals, which is great news. However, again, it's still complicated because of the size of these animals. We are potentially talking about planning these for quite a while in terms of walls may need to be taken down. Moving animals of this size is potentially very complicated, and we'll be looking to the support of Cairns Marine and so on, who have a lot of experience in moving large Pristis. So long term, we also need to be looking at other aspects, such as if we are successful, where will these Pristis go? Where will we be able to house them? We are limited within Europe as to for large facilities, so we need to ensure that long term we maybe have some places further afield, maybe in the States and so on, that might be able to help us out. But as I say, there are lots of goals. There is no current breeding yet. We have a long way to go, and so we will just continue to slowly work on this. If I haven't sent you the stud book last week, then I don't know about you. So please, if you are aware of anybody else who keeps Pristis, then please come and see me. At the moment, we have the Deep, Genoa, Oceanographic Valencia, Universum Science Centre in Göteborg, Oceanopolis, Sea Life Oberhausen, La Rochelle, and Mare Nostrum. So if you're not on that list, I don't yet know about you, and please, we'd be delighted to learn about your sawfish. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katie. Marion?
Thank you, Max. Hi there. I'm Marion. I'm from Düsseldorf, Aquasur Düsseldorf, and I'm the new coordinator of the MON piece of Potamotrylgon leopoldi and Atelomyctus marmoratus. And I just want to give you a quick overview of this status of those species. And those are my first monitors, so I'm just starting up with this kind of management and coordinating, so just have to fix it a little bit, and it's only a quick overview. Okay. I just want to tell you something about the freshwater stingray, the Leopoldi species. And I had a look at the IUCN data, what they write about the species, and there is a data deficient at the moment. But they wrote on the internet site, they are currently under study, so there will be much more information about the species in the future, hopefully. It is an endemic species in the Xingu River basin, and it prefers rocky grounds. It feeds mainly on snails and crabs, and it has got a relatively high reproduction numbers. It's between 4 and 12 pups, and average it's 7. So that means there could be a lot of pups or individuals in our population. The main threats in the past came from ornamental fish trade and from persecution due to the fear of sting injuries. That's quite a lot, I think, and from habitat lost by agriculture or gold mining or from sedimentation in the rivers. And in 2011 there starts a big dam building project in Belo Monte. And I think that's the main threat for the future for this species, because there will be an issue of genetic separation coming from this dam building. And we will see what brings this to the species in the future. I tried to get some numbers and holders for this overview. I don't have the in and outs for the 1 year period now, but I know which institutions I have to follow up, and I will send you an email in the next weeks, I think, just to ask for your populations. And I learned there are some institutions which are not on this list right now that have this species, so I will ask for some input from you. I had 2 different kind of data for my for this list. I looked at the census from Max, and there were 4 institutions in this census telling us that they have this species, and there we have it's from 2011, and there we have 10 animals in this population. And then I had a look at ZIMS, at the data of ZIMS, and there were quite a lot more institutions in there. So I have to mix this in a. I have to match those institutions and bring it in next year in one list, together in one list. And there are some more individuals, around 60 in North America, but I think we should only have a look at the European population first. That's what I'm planning to do in the next time. When I had a look at the ZIMS data, is it in this? No, it's the other species, I think. But it's funny, if you have a look at the ZIMS data, you learn a lot out of the reports. You can follow up some individuals where they were born and something like that. And I think it's a very good way to get a clue of the population. So I have to do it a little bit deeper in the future. The other species is Atelomycterus marmoratus, and the IUCN says that this is near threatened. Maybe they will update this species to vulnerable in the near future, but it's not. There's no so many information about this animal in the wild. They know it's common, it's widespread during the Indo-West Pacific, but that's all they know. There's not many information about the biology, about the reproduction, the feeding. So if anybody of you has this species, please tell me, let me know. And if you have any experience with breeding or holding this animal, I would be keen to learn from you and to hear from you. So we have a big lack of data in this species. main threats for this species is diamond fishing, coal mining, and an really increasing fishing pressure for food items, I think. So we have to follow up this species. And there you can see we have 11 individuals in this in the census, which from 2011 from Max. There are some holders there, and we have in Sims we have only 2 holders. I learned Göteborg, which is in this list, and they were not birthed in the last year or in the last 12 months, but I heard from you now that you have a lot of pups, so I have to put all this information I learned during the last 2 days, I have to put them in the list, I think. And there are some more aquariums. I had a look in an internet list, which is a German website. It's called Sootierliste. And there are some quite enthusiastic people going around between zoos and following up species. And that's where I got some of those institutions listed here in this here. And there is at the Potamotrögon leopoldi, the last in the list is Tropicariat Helsingborg. It's Elin from Sweden. Is she here? Ah, there. I talked to her yesterday, and it's funny, I found her in this Sootierliste somewhere, and now I learned they are breeding this species, so that's very good. And I have to match all those 3 lists to one pool, and then ask around, okay, what kind of numbers do you have and what's in the population. I will do that for both species. I have to do it in the next weeks, so I will send around an email mainly to the EUAC members and somehow to the EASA members. I have to consider how to do this. But please, if you have one of those species, it would be very nice if you just tell me, let me know, and I can come or send you then the email, and I put you in my group. It would be very good if we can stay in contact, and if you could tell me anything about the species, especially about the coral reef shark, that would be very good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Marion. Chris? Somewhere.
Thanks. Just to start off with, I just wanted to say I didn't really know what I was getting into when we started on the stud book for the Melanopterus, but it's actually been amazing fun. It's been really, really interesting. The more you learn about it, the more people tell you about it, the more you find out about it, the more interesting it becomes. So I'd recommend anyone does it in a species they're interested in. And to say thank you very much to Emma Rees. She's going to talk about the bowmouth in a minute, but she's been doing a lot of the work on the stud book, and we've also had a student, Suzanne, I can't remember her surname, McBride as well, who's just helped us for the last month, and she's actually back in Weymouth now, still working on the blacktip stud book, just looking for any patterns there might be in the data that we've got so far. So questionnaire responses, we actually sent them out globally as well, just to see if there's anyone else who's had experiences with breeding. We've had 52 replies. It was basically a spreadsheet with a number of different tabs. So the first one was describing the tank that the animals are in and all the details they have, what the temperature is, what the temperature fluctuation is through the year, what the daylight cycle is, all this kind of stuff. And the second one was really about all the animals that they've had in the past 5 years and what their current status is. And then the most interesting one that we've found really is the third one, which was about their breeding experiences and what experiences they've had over the over those 5 years. And that's, as soon as I get one of these inventories, you can't help but go straight to that page to see if there's anything exciting that's happened. So of the European replies, which is what I'm going to concentrate on today, we've had 42 replies. 14 of those sites have had breeding observations, which could be anything from watching the sharks breed to actually seeing a pregnant female or to having a birth. There's 199 sharks in the stud book as of October this year. There's 68 males to 89 females and 42 unknown. And a number of them have just replied without the full detail, so we'll go back and get more data later. But we appreciate everybody who's answered already. There's been a fairly steady population increase since 1996, and the maximum population reached was in 2011, and there's been a slight decrease since. So there's more females in captivity than males. So the breeding experiences, so 27 pups born in Europe since 2007, so there's actually quite a number of births. Of that amount, there's only 3 pups that are still alive in aquaria today. And I think that's why this stud book's so important, because we've got to be able to change that from, from this very low survival rate, find out what's successful in those 3 pups, and then try and translate that to everyone else, and at least share that information. So, 48% of them were stillborn, and this is a major issue. And I'm very interested in other stud books and other people who have experienced stillborns to see if anyone else has found particular reasons for the stillborns, because maybe we can, again, translate that over to this stud book. There's been a lot of cannibalism from the mother and other sharks, so quite often black-tipped reef shark needs a large kind of quarantine space, so if they have a female that's pregnant, they don't have the option to be able to move her off-show to allow her to pup off-show. And so what often happens is the pups will come out, and straight away either the mother or one of the other sharks will eat them. It's generally overnight as well, so you'll come in the morning, and you might find, for example, people have said their female was looking very large the day before. The next day, she's lost weight, so they know she's given birth, but you can't tell what's actually happened. It's possible that we've got a lack of suitable quarantine facilities for pregnant mothers, but that's what we'd like to determine, and then at least we could start recommending what a suitable quarantine facility is, because no one really knows. And lack of identification of pregnant sharks, and I think a lot of this is communication, and so I'll show you some pictures in a minute. And of course, it's about the judgment, being able to tell when the shark's about to give birth, so that you actually have people stay the night, or you move the shark, or whatever it is you're going to be able to do. And understanding when you're going to move that pregnant female. We had an experience this year in Weymouth, I think last month. We'd moved a shark that looked pregnant. We put it into our quarantine, and she did give birth, and she gave birth to 2 stillborns. So I did film it. We got a little bit of footage from it, and it was quite a chaotic ride up until that point. We weren't 100% sure she was pregnant, and we were going to do an ultrasound on the day that she actually gave birth. So that's the way it works. Just one other aspect to the stud book is we did a pathological findings report on all of the black-tipped reef sharks that had died within sea life over the last 10 years, and these are the results in order. I'm going to do more about this at the Monterey meeting, but it's quite useful to be able to see. So the majority of the animals are 6 to 7 years old, and the females appear to be outliving the males, and it was very exciting to see that Leipzig Zoo's got a 21-year-old female, but it's currently without a mate, and there's a fairly equal spread of sexes. So there's a table. It'll obviously be on the website, so if you want to go through and infer your own ideas about the numbers and see if you want to swap sharks, you can do that yourself as well. This is just a quick population, shows you the population increasing in Europe over the years, and the male to female ratio, and these are the ages of the animals. As I say, it'll be easier for you to look at it on the website. Emma's about to present this at the European Elasmobranch Association, I think it's in 2 weeks' time. And this gives you a lot of the data that I've just talked about. And it's very exciting to see Mahaline at Skaven Sea Life Centre has this baby 1-year-old shark that's still doing well, touch wood. So moving on, this is the last slide. I just wanted to introduce this. I know the book looks a bit like a detective book or something, but it's been amazing to speak to Isla Porcher. She actually lived in Tahiti, and she every day she went out diving with sharks, and she fed them, and the same sharks every single day. And she drew pictures of every single one using the dorsal fin as a way of recognising each shark, which is something we can do as well if we want to know the individuals. But the really useful bit was in her book, she really details about the pregnancies. So she watched them get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then one day they'd go off, and then the next day or 2 days later they'd come back and they'd given birth. And so she got all of this kind of detail. And she's very kindly allowed us to use all her photographs. So anyone who has a pregnant shark, you can just see these examples. This is early pregnancy, where you can see the babies are quite far forward still, but just at late pregnancy, the babies actually push right back. And so there's your indication that she's about to give birth. And also the cloaca opens up as well. But I think just having these photographs helps a lot, because people can help identify their pregnant sharks. Okay. I'm not going to talk about these two, but next year John will be able to give an update about the monitoring programme on rays, and at the moment there's a proposal for the cow-nose rays for David Garcia. Okay, thank you. Anyone got any more details about black tips, please get in contact. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Emma?
Thanks, Chris. Right, my name's Emma Rees. I'm one of the display curators at the Displays Development Department for Sea Life in Weymouth. And as Chris stated, I've been helping him work very closely on formulating the ESB for the blacktip reef sharks. And I'm also lucky enough to be the coordinator for the monitoring population programme for EASA, for rhino and chylostoma. This is going to be a very short overview of what's happened already, as I'm looking forward to getting my teeth stuck into it, but yeah, a lot of time's been taken up with looking at the black tips. So the current situation at the moment is that there's not many bowmouth rays within Europe. There's 10 in captivity in European institutions at the moment. 5 males, 4 of which are believed to be sexually mature, and 5 females, of which 2 are believed to be sexually mature. We've had 1 death in the last year, and at the moment we're currently making plans to move 2 of the large, mature animals and put them together to create a breeding programme at Blackpool Sea Life Centre. Mark Dvornak from Newport Aquarium included us in his surveys, and I distributed some out through Europe for him, and he's going to send the rest of the surveys that he got from that to me so that we can put that data together for this monitoring programme. And over the next few weeks I'll be sending out a full questionnaire to everybody just to gather any data that we haven't managed to get already, and that will be analysed and a report will be sent out by the end of this year. And that's the short and sweet. Thanks.
Thank you, Emma. Many programs, and it's interesting to see how many people have already come quite far in their program. Also, what you see now and then is that there is a lot of contact with AZA. Also AZA, the American association, is having a lot of programs in, on elasmobranchs. And why do everything by your own when you can collaborate? And there is a lot of collaboration between different programs on the same species, so that's really, really great. I'm not Nuria, but Nuria could not be here. So I just give a short overview of the ESB on Tenura lima from Nuria in Lisbon. She started in 2007 and published already 2 stud book overviews. And you can see that in the second stud book the number of animals is still increasing, but also the number of institutions is increasing. And this is not only because there are new institutions getting this species, but also because there are more and more people of you starting to send in their data. So it's really great to see this. This is just the current living population. 22 males, 38 females, and yeah, it looks really promising. You see the increase of the living population over the years. Many of these graphs, they start in end 90s. That doesn't say that this species was not already there before in Europe, but again, this is a lot of registration. Many people don't know anymore when exactly were the animals there, and yeah, from 1998, more and more people, more and more aquaria were starting to register their animals, and so they can give knowledge from historic data. Captive birth in this species is really good. You see more and more institutions being successful. 10 in 2012 and 8 animals in 2013, so that's really promising. And I hope, of course, that this will proceed. 32% of the living animals are captive bred. So in that perspective, the sustainability of the whole population is getting better and better. There are different transfers in 2013, and we hope to have more in the coming futures. There are 14 institutions that are having population or potential breeding pairs, so hopefully more and more births will come up. Nuria wants to do a lot in the future, so she wants to increase further the number of participants. And because you have so much offspring, new couples can be formed, especially when more institutions are breeding. So you can have genetic independent couples formed. So this way you get also new participants. But potential breeding pairs, of course, is one of the major things. You need to have a couple to be able to breed. And of course, increase in knowledge will be a constant issue to work on. Husbandry manual. Well, it's really good to see that the manual, the name manual, is going into husbandry note, and I think that will make it much easier for any coordinator to start to work something out and just to have a note only on the breeding or only on the feeding or only on the health, and that makes it's much more workable. Genetic analysis is also important on the population. Please contact Nuria if you're not on the list yet. Nuria is also a coordinator of the Sphena levini. Yesterday we saw some very nice animals swimming around, and it's a species which is quite new in Europe. This monitoring program just started in 2013 because of the RCP workshop in London. She wants to follow the trend, what is happening in Europe, what problems do people have with the species. It's not the most easiest species to keep, and there are different issues to tackle. And hopefully, when combining all this information, you will get more and more information on how to keep these species. And when you compile all this, everybody can learn from it, because that's, of course, really important. The current living population is already 37 animals in Europe, so it's quite a large number. And that's also because in the last 2-3 years, most came into Europe. Again, please contact Nuria if you're not on the list, and she can ask you further on this species. Also, when you're interested in the species, in whatever species, please try to check the coordinator. Jean-Philippe Cateau, he is the stud bookkeeper of Carcharinus plumbeus. This is a big stud book. It's a lot of work for him. And I just phoned Jean-Philippe last week, and he was saying, it's a lot of work. And I really need to have a little bit help. So if anybody is interested to help Jean-Philippe further, bringing the stud book another step further, that would be really great. Please contact me or Jean-Philippe directly. This is a stud book which was improved in 2010, and there is a lot happening with that species. There are not an enormous number of participants, but still there are quite a large number of animals, and I think the number of participants is still increasing. This is the age pyramid of the animals within the population. And it's quite interesting to see that the oldest is 40 years old, 40 years in captivity. So I think it's really good to be able to analyze such data from the population. This is quite an extensive list, but you can see that, especially on the right side, where are we here? Living Pup, there are 4 institutions that are very successful at the moment in producing young, and that's really beautiful to see. It's a big shark species, and that you are able to breed, and that there are more institutions also able to breed. That's really promising. And of course, Antibes is incredible what they do. 200 young, so it's incredible how many young they have had. Very successful. The ESB for the Stegostoma, for the zebra shark, started in 2007. There are now already 40 participating public aquaria. It's a very nice species, and we work a lot together with the AZA, with Lice Watson. This is an old name I see, Lice Watson. At the moment I'm working on a husbandry paper for the Monterey Bay Elasmobranch meeting, together with Lice, on different issues of husbandry of zebra shark. The captive population also increased a lot over the years. But what's really interesting to see is that there is also a lot of birth coming up. And not only one institution, but there are now already 3 institutions in the last year that produce young. And that's really nice to see. Not all young are still alive, so there are still a few challenges to cope with when you have young. And also there are more and more participants mailing me that they have eggs now of the species. So it's really nice to see the development of this population. And it's not because it's an ESB, but it's also because animals are getting older and couples are formed, and I think also the whole knowledge of this species is increasing. Something I would like to mention shortly is that there were different breeding loan transfers. Breeding loan is a very common activity within the zoo community on mammals and on birds. You just send an animal to another aquaria or to another zoo, but it's still your own animal. So you bring them on breeding loan. So you lend them the animal. You can do that for a specific defined time, depending, for example, we sent one zebra shark to Hamburg, and together with Guido we discussed how long should we do that. Now, well, we decided to do it around half a year, and then after half a year the animal would come back. But you can also do a breeding loan and just give the animal to, for example, to Hamburg and say, okay, this is your animal, you can keep it for as long as you want, unless you have young. Because maybe when you have young, it would be nice to have also some young back. Or maybe in the future, I would like to have the animal back. And so with breeding loan, you can make a contract together, and you can put in whatever you want, and you can both agree on that. And it's very nice to see that there were 3 different breeding loan transfers with this species in the last couple of years, and that's something which is coming up. They have not been, all 3 have not been leading to a successful young, although the last transfer from Berlin to Hamburg, I believe there were some vital eggs already, some live eggs. So in that perspective, I think it was a big step. Maybe also nice to say shortly is that in Arnhem in 2012 we did an artificial insemination on Stegostoma. This was fun. This was so much fun that we really didn't know what we were going to do. So together with the vet we were looking how should we get the sperm out and how can we bring the sperm in. This is something really new. We decided to do it again in 2014. But this time we also try to get some more people involved. Yeah, we are not looking too stupid in how should we do this. So it's really a trial and error. I've been in contact with already other aquaria that are also trying this. And I hear from more species of Elasmobranchs, they are trying artificial insemination. So maybe that will be an interesting step for the future. But I stepped down for this stud book. There will be 2 new stud book keepers for the zebra shark. That's Sylvia and Katie. I picked up the co-chair on the FAITAG, and yeah, there is always a limited amount of time. So I'm really happy that Katie and Sylvia want to pick up the stud book and bring it further. So I'm out. So if there is any question or anything happening with your animal, please contact them. And well, I'm sure, I'm really sure that this stud book will be put further into new big steps. So it's very nice. The last overview is on the white-spotted eagle ray stud book. This is also what I'm running at the moment. We do that now since 2010, 12 participating public aquaria. If you look at the historic population, again, it starts somewhere in the 90s. There was one animal mentioned in Berlin in 88, and then you made a big step to 1998, 1997. To see that there were some animals. Well, there is an enormous increase in this species within Europe. There's a lot of interest in the larger aquaria. Also, the breeding is going quite nicely. In Arnhem, we have now 30 young in total, but also Dubai is starting to produce young. Really nice to see. The only problem is when you breed is that you don't know who daddy is. So we did some research. For the female, you can see it. Also in Copenhagen, you could see there was one of the eagle rays swimming there with a very big belly. So I'm pretty sure she was pregnant. But when you have a group in Arnhem, we have a group of 4 females and 2 males. The female is easy to see who is mommy, but we don't know who is the father. So we did some genetic research by picking the poisonous sting of the animal and try to analyze that and to see if we could find out who the father was. Well, both fathers were active, but it was quite nice to see that some of the females only went with this father, and the other female only went with that father, and one female thought, why not do both fathers? So yeah, that was nice to see. It was even so strange that of the lady who was going with both males, she had a twin of one male and of the other male. So within one twin, she had 2 fathers. So it was quite nice. So the genetic research will help, in any case, better for this stud book. We are now going into another step of genetic research because the species is a bit of a mess. And you could even see it yesterday in Copenhagen. There were some white-spotted eagle rays with white spots, and there were some white-spotted eagle rays with not white spots. And yeah, you see that all over Europe, and you see it also if I just take a few pictures here from internet. There's a lot of difference, only by the look, but also by the geographic distribution. So a lot of research is done within the scientific world. Is this 1 species, or it is 3 species, or 5 species? So we are now sampling animals from the captive population within Europe and try to see if we can find out which species we have. And to be honest, I'm pretty sure now that we have not Aedobatus narinari in Europe. So the stud book of Aedes narinari is from today finished. But now we need to know what other species we have. And for example, from Arnhem we have young, and we send them to other aquaria like Montpellier, where they have already some eagle rays. But is it the same species? Do you combine now the same species? The sex ratio is now good, because they only had 3 males, and now they have a female. But when it's a different species, you don't want to combine. So it's quite vital to know yeah, the genetic taxonomy. This is what I wanted to tell you about the eagle ray. I would like to have a short discussion. If there are any questions about the stud book presentation, so please can all the stud book or monitoring coordinators come forward. Piet?
I would just like to add a little comment to the dots on the eagle ray. That eagle ray you referred to yesterday in Copenhagen was, as when it was young, it was dotted like the other eagle rays. So I don't know. probably the same species anyway, but it seems that when they go in captivity for a while, they lose their dots.
Yeah, that's right. That's also what we see with the population we have. So when young are born, they have in the back, they have nice white dots, or sometimes half of them. But when they are 1 or 2 years old, the dots are gone. So yeah. Any other questions?
Regarding the manuals, AZA is kind of looking at the Elasmobranch manual and that series to kind of take the place of actually having to do the very formal and tedious manuals that the rest of the zoo people have laid out. What's the attitude of that over here in Europe?
Well, the attitude is that we try now to create husbandry notes. So not a whole guideline, but more work towards notes. And yeah, what is a note? It's that what you think is important for your species to tell to everybody, or that you found out some interesting husbandry information to share. So that's a more easy way of combining information.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, partially. Also, I think those sawfish young are still alive.
Sorry?
The sawfish young are still alive, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Yeah.
I just have a comment there. One thing that would be nice is to be able to join all the people together who are in the stud book, so that when someone has a birth, so at the moment, hello? At the moment, when we have a birth at one of the aquariums of a blacktit, for example, it'd be very nice for all the other people that are part of the stud book to get that kind of live information so they learn from whatever happens. And so I'm still looking for the right place to put that, whether it's an email thing that we're all on the same email and we just send out an email each time, or we have, I don't know, some other kind of IT solution. But if anyone else has already confronted that problem, let me know, because I think it'd be very valuable to be able to have that live kind of data shared between everyone.
But do you have a suggestion how to do that?
At the moment, the only way I've tried before is an email list server. So just sending an email shot out to all the people once you hear something different about your sharks.
Yeah.
And I can do that, but you get lots of emails. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll ask the people who are involved in the stud book.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we can also do something via the website. We could ask Stefan. Yeah. Thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, I would be happy to hear about any good marking method for elasmobranchs in general. What is the state of the art? We need to identify our animals, and when you see it every day, of course, you can work by individual characteristics like dots or scars or whatever, but once you give this animal away, after 2 years, you're certainly not able to identify it anymore. Are there any recent advances in marking or whatever?
I'm just seen in Atlanta. I've been in a raw at Atlanta, and the Americans do some tattoo. They have asked a guy from a tattoo shop to, dots, different colors, and that seems to be quite successful. I can't remember the name, but I can find out who it was and to ask what the experience. But it looked quite good, so they asked a local tattoo shop to mark the animals. And even good for education, because the people from the public could recognize the special fish for like a sea bass or something as well. So.
Thank you.
Have you ever been trying just microchips to monitor? I mean, those fish who are individually fed should be easily then identified by this little reading thing for the microchip.
Yeah, for the microchip you need to catch the thing, which is in certain occasions not easy.
Yeah, but you catch it for transport, then you have it in hand.
Well, just to add to that, we pit tag our black tips, which is, I think, what we're talking about. But the other thing, it's a bit like a lightsaber from Star Wars that you can use that actually goes in the water, so the divers can go down near the animal and just wave it above it, so you don't have to catch it. Or also, you can catch them in a net or something and do it quite near it, but it's not quite the next stage, which is, I suppose, having the pit tag reader the other side of your aquarium glass, and so every time the shark goes past, it comes up with the number. That's something that we've been looking at.
Juan?
Yeah, a couple of years ago in the Dubai Mall, we had 47 tigers, so we had a problem. So we tried silver nitrate. That worked quite well. The problem is the public can see the numbers or the markings. The other one is a microchip. We found these readers from the pig industry. They're very cheap. That's the reason we got them. We did several tests to put in little housings, and in the end, it works perfectly. You had tag the animal in transportation, divers go in, pass the machine next to them, and you can read it fairly easy. If you drown the machine, it costs you $50.
How long does silver nitrate stay on?
It's for a couple of months. But we used to get every animal, probably every month, to get blood samples.
Yeah.
So every month we just redo the marking again.
It depends on the species as well. You wouldn't ever silver nitrate a counter ray or an eagle ray, but carcharinids are up to 6 months sometimes, or up to a year. It depends on the animal and its growth rate, really. If they're mature breeders, they should last for 6 to 12 months with silver nitrate, really properly applied silver nitrate dots on the pectoral fin.
Yeah, and there is no chance of inflammation because it's kind of burning. You do or not?
Generally, that's basically what you're doing. You're burning it. Our method was always to dry the area, dip the silver nitrate in fresh water, apply it, and then gently rinse salt water over it, and it basically goes from a very light white mark to a dark gray spot. So yeah, it's just a very tiny mark, and we had never had an infection or disease issue with it. However, I have heard stories of adverse reactions with rhinobathans and like other soft-skinned, scaleless rays. So I wouldn't recommend it for those.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I would like to go on. Thank you very much for your presentation. Just very shortly about the elasmobranch part, what next? Well, in any case, I hope in 2013 and 2014 the coordinators will start to ask you a lot of information. Please give your information. But this is also important. So we have some vacancies. When making this list, I heard already Brian saying, well, Rachel maybe wants to do the Motoro. So it's really nice that this list already becoming a little bit smaller. But we will put this list on the website. There are in any case still some species open for programs, for coordinators. So if anybody is interested, please contact me as soon as possible. Well, I think we had the discussion already. Also looking at the time, I think we should proceed. I want to have, during the lunch, for all the coordinators, I would like to sit on one table and to hear a little bit how it's all going and if there are any problems. So please, for all the coordinators, let's try to sit on one table. Thank you. Brian?
Hello. Hello.
Now is a 2-hour.
Sorry, it's just a very quick announcement. Before Dennis at the back there was talking about the idea of kind of like a preferred list of suppliers, and the Americans, colleagues, have been getting on with this, and I think they've got quite far with it. And previously at the collection plan meeting we were also talking about the idea of some kind of supplier evaluation or some kind of preferred list as well. So anyone who is interested in discussing this and seeing if there's some kind of way forward we can go with a collaboration of aquariums, we wondered if maybe we could meet at the end of today after the last session. So anyone who's interested, just come to that session and we'll discuss if there's anywhere we can go with it and have a look at what Dennis has been doing. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. There is one last presentation. We've been talking about sharks and rays for a while, but Dirk sent through an update on the Sea Corps thing. It's only a few slides. It was originally a lot of slides, and I said make it smaller. And Andrew's kindly agreed to give the presentation on Dirk's behalf. It shouldn't take very long, but there we go. Do you want that?
No. Yes, it is. It's quite brief. So, Sea Corps, the mission is to promote coral reef conservation through research, education, outreach and restoration, as I'm sure most of you are aware already. This is a quick sort of update of where and what they've been up to over the last year or so. The project in Curacao, that's been in partnership with Penn State University, the Aquarium in Curacao, Columbus Zoo, the University of Amsterdam, and the Caribbean Research Management and Biodiversity Foundation. The main impetus really of the projects that have been set up around Sea Corps is to go out into the areas and try to address, particularly with this one, it's Caribbean corals that are endangered within the environment. This one is focusing on Palmata and Cervicornis. The key to the Sea Corps really is about training workshops. It's about getting as many people together as possible. So whether that's local stakeholders, public aquariums, scientists, to try and bring together a knowledge base that they all bring a little bit of something to it, but they also get a lot out of it as well. The workshops that have taken place over the last sort of 11 years have included roughly around about 47 different institutions. So increasing that knowledge base for coral conservation and research, but also bringing to it, particularly from our sort of industry, it's the knowledge and understanding behind the system development for the actual care of the practice itself. If you look in the bottom left-hand, right-hand picture there, that's Curacao, and it gives you an idea of sort of one of the things that often public aquariums bring to the fieldwork is the ability to develop systems for looking after the corals themselves. Going out into the field, collecting the coral spawn, bringing it back into a lab-type environment, getting good genetic viability and fertilization, growing on the planula larvae and then being able to settle it out to becomes that primary polyp and then growing it on again. There's a great deal of expertise over the last sort of 11 years to hone this practice and get it better and better and better, to the point where the Curacao, they have a PhD research project that's been looking at exactly this practice and getting it as good as possible. So far, with some coral spawn that was collected in 2010 with the Palmata and initially Cervicornis, but unfortunately in the subsequent years, they haven't had such good spawning. So that's meant that as a species that's directly underneath the research, they've left that to one side and focused more on the Palmata. So with developing these techniques and particularly the system designs behind being able to raise them on, they've been able to get roughly around about an 80% success rate in recruitment. So that's down to from fertilization through to that primary polyp, which is really, really good and significantly better than anything you'd find in the wild normally. Then, if you see in the top right there, that's after about 12 months of growing on in the labs in Curacao, then those are transplanted back out onto the reef themselves. And it's fantastic to see that after 24 months, they had 100% survivorship on all the frags that were transplanted back out onto the reef. So that's where sort of Curaçao's been up to. They've been expanding further and further around the world, and this one is in Guam. The workshop took place just in August time. It had, again, the partners were Henry Dorley, Pittsburgh Zoo, University of Guam, Guam government and Underwater World which is actually where the field work took place. And we're, again, as a longer-term project, they're building facilities there so that each year they can go out, collect the coral spawn, bring them back into the labs, grow them on, and then transplant them back out onto the reef. We actually had one of our coral biologists went on this trip, and again, from our point of view, I mean, we have some skilled coral husbandry within our institutions, but actually being able to take them out and put them into a workshop with lots of people from all around the world, both aquarists and stakeholders generally, they're able to get so much more information out of it, and they come back with much more, a better ability of an understanding of the corals themselves, both directly with the skills that they've learned from being able to go out onto the reef, collect the coral spawn, bring them back, but developing the systems too, so practical knowledge increases as well. So it's kind of a win-win from our point of view to send the aquarists out there, get the skill base increasing, which they always come back and apply back into your institutions too. There was 35 participants in this 10-day workshop, which was from 6 different countries, and they focused generally on Humulus and tenui. The last one was Mexico, and this one, again, is in partnership with National Marine Parks, University, Mexico, Aquarium and Pittsburgh Zoo. Similar sort of setup again, and it's aimed at being a longer term thing. So they're developing systems, setting them up there longer term, have more and more people from around the world being able to come into different environments. And then with this wider sort of branching network, going around to different areas and different seas, you get to see a lot more and increase your knowledge base of the different environments where the corals are specifically from. But this one particularly was more aimed at stakeholders rather than the aquarium affiliates this year. Other things for this year then, we have a new website. Please go have a look at it. It has a lot more information on it about coral biology generally, but also the work that Seacorps gets up to over the last sort of few years and going forward. And last and not least, for us, for example, having sent out an aquarist out into the field and come back into our aquarium, we have large coral exhibits as well, putting in some information about coral biology and coral conservation isn't a new thing, but actually being able to link it directly through into Seacorps, and then being able to show that maybe the footage of your aquarist that's been out there is really, really useful as a great tool to engage more of the public. And that's exactly what the Horniman have done this year too. I think that's us. If you want any more information, contact Dirk, the slightly taller, more German version.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay, I won't keep you any longer. I just want to say thanks for all of you that came today, and hopefully you found it interesting, and hopefully it's generated enough interest to get much more people involved in participating in all of these really, really good programs. Thank you very much.